All right, hurricane season is upon us. So whether you've purchased your house already or whether you're getting ready to, there are some things that you need to know to prepare yourself for hurricane season, whether it's this season, next year, or 5 years from now. Now, bear in mind, hurricane season starts in June, ends in November. Now, that can be a little early, it can be a little late, kind of depends, but that gives you a pretty good idea. During that time, you're going to want to have some things prepared. And personally, I would suggest starting in the wintertime. Now, of course, we're already in June now, so you can't really start in the wintertime, but there are some things that you can do to prepare. Now, I'm going to give you these things based on best practices first. So I'm going to give you a list of things, and then I'm going to tell you the things that I do or don't do or that I've never done as a person who is, a native Floridian who's been through a ton of hurricanes. So let's start with outside the home. So outside the home, the biggest things you need to do are keep trees trimmed. And you want to keep them trimmed so that you don't end up with branches, swaying, breaking, landing on cars, landing on roofs, anything that's around your roof as far as overhanging branches, tree limbs, anything like that, you want to have trimmed away well before the hurricane season, or if nothing else, at the beginning of the hurricane season before the first named storm hits. All right. Now, the other thing is sheets of plywood. You can have sheets of plywood cut to fit all your windows, and then there are snap clips that you can get at Lowe's or at Home Depot that you put on the corners and then just kind of shove them in, and they hold that plywood against the window so that you don't end up with things intruding like limbs or paint cans or whatever's outside, rocks, anything that the hurricane would pick up and throw at your windows. If you're considering making a move to Florida, especially the Central Florida, Tampa Bay area, down into Sarasota, Manatee, up into Orlando, let me know. I can answer any questions you have. I can definitely help you kind of figure out what areas you want to move into. All my information is in the description below. You want to have your roof inspected before hurricane season, especially if it's an older roof. You want to make sure that it's going to be able to last through those sustained winds. Winds that are gusts are not going to do as much damage as sustained winds. And so when you have 75, 80, 100 mile an hour winds that are just pummeling that roof for a long period of time, that's different than having a gust of wind that hits it and leaves, hits it and leaves. You want to make sure that your roof is able to withstand those sustained winds. And by getting your roof inspected, you're going to know if there's any issues ahead of time. Now, you want to make sure that you clean your trash cans and, keep some water in your trash cans for flushing in case water goes out. If there's a main break, something like that, you want to make sure that you have a trash can full of water that you can take a bucket and pour into the back of your toilet and be able to flush your toilet when there's, no water coming in. We'll talk about inside and clean water a little bit later on. Now, if there's flooding that you're concerned about, if you live in a flood zone or if you're worried about flooding, sandbags are a big deal. So you can get sandbags from Lowe's or Home Depot. You probably having to dig a big hole in the backyard and fill your sandbags, or get dirt from someplace and fill your sandbags. But, that's a big deal. The other thing you can do is get 3 or 4 mil plastic sheets. Home Depot and Lowe's sell them in big rolls, and they're usually like 100 feet long and, 8 feet wide. And you can take that and you can put that with sandbags around your doorways, front door, back door, sliding glass doors, stuff like that, to keep the water from, seeping inside as best as possible if you're in a flood zone. Now, if you're not in a flood zone, it's probably not going to be a big deal. Okay, so out of those things, what have I done before? Fill my trash cans. I do that every year. Anytime there's a named hurricane coming through, I clean my trash can out with bleach. I fill it with water, and then I leave it there in case I need it for flushing toilets in case the water main goes out. I have never done the roof inspection, to be quite honest with you. I should, but I never have. And my roofs have always stayed pretty good. I haven't had any issues, but I've always had pretty good roofs. I've kept my trees trimmed. That's another big thing. I lived on an acre for a long time, for like 30 years, and I try to keep my trees trimmed. There was one year where, whether I trimmed the trees or not, I had 16 trees down in my backyard, and I ran a chainsaw for the next 8 months just trying to clean everything up. Probably because if I think about it, I wasn't going to pay somebody else $5,000 to do it for me. So I did it myself. As far as the plastic, yes, I have plastic. I have a big roll of plastic just in case I need it. And then as far as the sandbag goes, I've never done the sandbags, but I always have wanted to. The problem with the sandbags is getting the dirt for it at the time you need it. By the time this whole thing rolls around, there's no dirt. If you do it ahead of time, then what are you going to do? Just hang on to plastic or hang on to sandbags in your house, like in your garage, and have a ton of sandbags? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. So what I've done before is tape the plastic and then put blocks or things to hold the plastic down, and then put sand that I just dig in the yard and put sand over the top. And that's been sufficient at times when I've needed it. The clips and the window, I've never done that. I've never had, all of that done ahead of time. I spend so much time outside cleaning everything up and making sure that there's nothing that's going to come through the windows that I've never really had an issue. But all of this is about your peace of mind and what you feel the most comfortable doing. All right, let's go inside the home. That same roll of 3 or 4 mil plastic can be put into the tub and taped around the tub so that it kind of comes hanging out over and taped along the sides. And you can fill the tub with clean water. And that will give you a lot of water for drinking. You're going to want some coolers, probably some fairly large size coolers. So, Igloo has some great coolers. If you want to spend the extra money on Yeti coolers, they stay cold. Stuff stays cold in there forever. But having some coolers is going to help you, because if the power goes out, your freezer is going to be okay for a day or two, maybe 3. But all of the stuff in your fridge is going to start having problems. So by having some coolers, you can transfer everything over into the fridge, or over from the fridge, I should say, into the coolers. And then you can take some of your frozen foods and put them there as well. Now, what we do when hurricane season comes and we know that there's a named storm, as soon as we find out, we start taking plastic bags, like Ziploc bags, of freezer bags, filling them with water and putting them in the freezer and freezing them, so that we have blocks of ice, not cubes, because cubes will end up with air around them. And with the air around the cubes, you end up with more, I guess the best way to put it would be less insulation and more dripping. The ice cubes tend to melt faster. When you have a block of ice, they tend to stay cold longer. And so we freeze blocks of ice and then put them into the cooler along with all of our perishables. Once we've gone a day or two and we see that the freezer's not freezing, or it's not, keeping things as cold as we like, then we transfer that into the coolers as well. Now, you also want to make sure that, if you have a power outage, not really knowing how long it's going to be out, you want to consume the foods that are going to spoil the fastest first, and then work on, the things that are in the freezer or whatever. The other thing that you can do if you're worried about long term, so if you're in an area that's very rural and you're worried about, being out of power for weeks rather than just a few hours, then you're going to want to have a larder. You're going to want to have a pantry that has some supplies, some hurricane supplies, of things that, that you can eat that aren't going to go bad. So big tubs of peanut butter, boxes of crackers, canned foods, anything like that. You can just kind of put them on a section of your pantry, and nobody gets into them unless there's a hurricane. Okay. Now, you want to have at least 5 gallons of water for each person, along with the water that's in the tub. And so the best way to do that is to fill those big 5-gallon collapsible containers that you can get at Walmart. Fill those with water and have one for each family member, so that you have additional water in case you need it. Remember, we can live without food for weeks, we can't live without water for more than a few days. So dehydration is a big deal when there's not clean water. Now, when it comes to being able to cook, I personally have a turkey fryer. And I've never fried a turkey in it, okay? I've done a lot of crab boils and shrimp boils in it. But what I use it for is I have cast iron skillets, and I have pots and pans, and I have a percolator, an outdoor percolator for coffee. And so I will literally use that turkey fryer to do all of my outdoor cooking if there is a power outage. Now, I have moved since, probably about 5 years ago, I moved to Winter Haven, have not had an issue, didn't need to really use the turkey fryer for anything that's happened here. But when I lived in Lakeland, out in the country, like out off of County Line Road, there were a few occasions where we were without power for a week. And so we did everything outside as far as cooking and cleaning. Now, we did not lose water, thank God, but we were able to do all of our cooking off of that turkey fryer. Now, the other thing that I have for that turkey fryer is I have 5 propane tanks in the garage. And those 5 propane tanks will not run out just from one hurricane. I filled them all years ago, and I'm still using them. I haven't run out yet on any of them. And so just, having a couple of those, 1 or 2 of those, along with that turkey fryer and some cast iron, put those things in a section of your garage and leave them there. And then when you need them, you have them. And that's what being prepared is all about. Now, the things that I told you for inside the home are all things that I do. Okay? Those are all things that I do. The stuff for the outside, I do some of them, I don't do others. Kind of depends. Now, when the storm comes, the next thing you've got to do is secure anything that's not tied down outside. Remember, those winds are going to pick things up and just move them. And if they move them into your home, or if they move them into your car, you're going to have issues. So what we've done is we've taken our vehicles and parked our vehicles in between the 2 homes, one on either side, so that there was a little bit more protection. Because our garage, we use our garage for a workshop and for other stuff, and so there's no place to put a car in it. So we park our vehicles on the side in between the houses so that, if there is a storm and there's stuff being blown around, there's less of a chance of stuff hitting our vehicles. You may want to, how can I put this? You may want to just leave. If it's a super, super bad storm. So if it's like a Category 5 and you're on the coast, or you're over in Tampa, or you're over in Bradenton or Sarasota, and it's a Category 5, you may just want to board the house up and leave. Don't feel bad to leave. If you've got homeowners insurance and you've taken pictures of everything in your house and you have all of your valuables locked up, if something gets stolen, it gets stolen. It's stuff. You can replace stuff, but you can't replace you. And so when you start looking at your battle plan for a hurricane, you want to start thinking in terms of the levels. So I live in Central Florida, the Winter Haven area, Polk County. Anywhere in Central Florida, Orlando, Polk County, anywhere's like that. By the time a big storm gets to us, it's usually a Category 1 or 2, which that's kind of party time for most, Floridians. Not a big deal. If you're in a situation where you're having to deal with a Category 3, 4, or 5, then, the severity is going to depend on how well you've prepared and where the storm is and what you're seeing in terms of the eye of the storm and where the heaviest winds are. And remember, it's the sustained winds that are the most dangerous. The gust, most homes can deal with. But when you've got that sustained wind at 120, 130 miles an hour, just pushing, something's going to give way. And so when you start getting into a Category 4 or 5 and you're on the coast, leave. You're better off leaving. You're better off not taking the chance. Now, the other thing is, don't go exploring. After a hurricane, the number one thing that gets people killed is being dumb enough to go venture out to see what the damage is. People have gotten killed because of dead hanging limbs, where the hurricane has really kind of weaken a big branch on an oak tree or whatever, or a tree that's been leaning over. And, some knothead will go out there and start looking around, and then boom, they get crushed by something. Don't do that. Don't be that knothead. Nobody wants to go to a funeral and say, oh, well, he just, he died because he was stupid. Don't do that. Other people have gotten killed because they're wandering around on the street or they're driving their car and then they run over or get in contact with a power line that's down and then they get electrocuted to death. Don't do that. If there's a hurricane, stay in your home. If you don't have to go anyplace, don't. Let the people that are going to go out there and clean the place up for you. Watch the news. You have everything you need in your home to be able to survive. You're not going to be going to work. You're not going to go to the movies. Life is not going to just automatically go back to normal right after the hurricane. Give it some time. Give it a couple of days. Know what's going on around you before you start going out and trying to explore. It's just not worth it. Okay, if you guys have any questions about dealing with hurricanes or, other things that you have questions about when it comes to, purchasing a home in Florida and worrying about stuff like this, make sure you let me know. All my information is in the description below. Have a great one.